Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a highly volatile situation unfolding in the Middle East right now, breaking down the details from a recent Fox News broadcast. Now, you might be wondering, why should this be on your radar? Well, because the standoff we're unpacking today has massive ripple effects on global stability and, frankly, the global economy. We're talking breaking news of kinetic military action, deeply entrenched diplomatic gridlock, and some incredibly high-stakes strategic maneuvering. Our goal today is to unravel this complex geopolitical web using our source material so we can understand exactly where things stand right now, and more importantly, where they might be heading. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the catalyst. Then we'll look at the standoff, the posture, the chessboard, and finally, wrap things up with the stakes. Okay, Section 1, the catalyst. Let's look at the immediate, kinetic event that is driving today's news cycle. So, the source coverage kicks off with some massive breaking news out of the United Arab Emirates. A significant drone attack has targeted a highly sensitive location, a nuclear power plant. The analysis notes that this strike actually caused a fire at a generator located on the outskirts of the facility. And let's be real, anytime you hear the words drone strike and nuclear plant in the exact same sentence, international alarm bells start ringing instantly. And here's exactly why those alarms are ringing so loudly. According to officials cited in the broadcast, all fingers are pointing directly at the Iranian regime. This isn't just some isolated incident. It's acting like a massive spark in an already incredibly volatile region. The discussion really emphasizes that this comes as tension continues to rise across the Middle East, with the entire region basically holding its breath, just waiting to see if broader combat operations are going to resume in the days ahead. Moving on to Section 2, the standoff. This is where we look at the serious diplomatic gridlock behind all of this. The whole diplomatic stalemate really boils down to two entirely incompatible positions. On one side, you have the absolute demand from the US, absolutely zero nuclear capabilities, period. And on the flip side, you have the Iranian proposal, a 20-year timeline. The panel points out that recent efforts toward a diplomatic solution have totally fallen flat. Officials in Tehran are reportedly totally unwilling to make the kind of concessions needed to reach a deal that actually aligns with that strict zero nuclear requirement from the United States. To give you a sense of the U.S. perspective on this gridlock, the broadcast highlighted remarks from President Trump made right after a return flight from China. He basically indicated that he tossed the Iranian response out immediately, saying, "I looked at it, and if I don't like the first sentence, I just throw it away." The coverage explains that the sentence he found so unacceptable was Iran agreeing to no nuclear, but still demanding guarantees stretched over a 20-year timeline. For the U.S. administration, 20 years just doesn't cut it. The demand is zero nuclear capability right now. But we also have to look at the Iranian perspective presented in the source. Iran is actively accusing the United States of constantly shifting the goalposts and changing their negotiating positions. For instance, they claim that an attack on their nuclear facilities already happened, and the U.S. claimed they were completely destroyed. Yet now, the U.S. is once again talking about attacking those exact same facilities. According to Iranian officials cited in the broadcast, these contradictory statements show a deep American confusion about what their actual objectives are in this war. So you can clearly see the classic gridlock here. Both sides fundamentally distrust the motives of the other. All right, let's transition into Section 3, the posture. We're talking military movements and the very deliberate messaging going on. When you look at the timeline, you really get a sense of the sheer scale and, honestly, the kind of weird modern reality of how military posturing works today. First, you have a historical benchmark, the Vietnam War. Just this past Saturday, the USS Gerald R carrier strike group returned to the US after a deployment that was the longest since Vietnam. That is a massive physical projection of naval power. But military posturing in the modern era isn't just physical anymore, right? It's digital. Overnight, President Trump shared a series of AI-generated images on Truth Social, including one showing him commanding the Navy with the caption, "It was the calm before the storm," sending a highly visible strategic signal. It's a fascinating contrast. You're projecting power through massive aircraft carriers in the ocean, right alongside AI-generated memes on social media. To really capture the domestic military tone right now, the broadcast featured comments from Secretary of State Pete Hegseth. He praised the returning sailors, describing their work as demonstrating phenomenal, absolute resolve, epic fury. He really emphasized the heroism and professionalism of a strike group that literally circumnavigated the globe 3 times. The phrasing he uses there, absolute resolve, epic fury, is absolutely crucial because it underscores the intense, unyielding posture the U.S. is attempting to project to the world. So, how is Iran responding to all that posture? Uncovering their tactical playbook here is pretty fascinating. Regional intelligence officials assess that inside Iran, there's a very real anticipation that U.S. combat operations might actually resume. Because of that, these officials report that Iran is actively leaning into a strategy of deception and delay. Their ultimate hope? That simply buying time will make it structurally and logistically much harder for the U.S. if a hot war actually kicks off. That brings us to Section 4, the chessboard. What are the actual strategic moves on the table right now? The real meat of this analysis is looking at the actual strategic options the U.S. is weighing right now to pressure the Iranian regime. The panel broke it down into a few distinct paths. First up, a targeted ground offensive, specifically designed to secure nuclear material. Second, deploying military forces directly to Kharg Island. And third, simply maintaining the current, heavily punishing U.S. blockade of Iranian ports. Now, I want to hover on that second option for just a second, 90%. This staggering number represents the portion of Iran's crude oil exports that flow directly through Kharg Island. If you want to understand why Kharg Island is viewed as a critical, top-tier strategic target on this chessboard, this single statistic hits the nail on the head. Controlling or threatening that island literally means threatening the absolute lifeblood of the entire Iranian economy. Finally, let's zoom out to Section 5, the stakes. Let's look at the long-term realities here. You can see that the strategy is really a two-pronged approach, deliberately designed to squeeze the Iranian regime. Externally, you've got the economic vice, the continued U.S. port blockades, and the constant looming threat of kinetic strikes. But the analysis makes a great point that this external pressure is explicitly meant to fuel internal pressure. As the economic situation gets worse from the blockade, the regime in Tehran is facing mounting domestic pressure from its own people. The overall goal is to make the regime a little bit weaker each day, complicating their ability to hold on to support or rebuild. But, and this is a massive dilemma the panel pointed out, despite all this immense pressure, the Iranian regime is, as one commentator put it, built to last. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, has its commanders heavily spread across all the country's diverse provinces, which makes the regime incredibly resilient against any sort of localized collapse. Add to this the totally uncompromising U.S. goal of the absolute elimination of nuclear capabilities, which is a goal that requires perfect, precise timing to execute correctly. And meanwhile, back home in the U.S., there's rising public pressure, with everyday citizens feeling the pinch of high gas prices stemming from the conflict, and naturally, they want a quick resolution. And that brings domestic politics crashing right into the geopolitical arena. The coverage introduces this lens really clearly, with a panelist actually praising the decision to maintain a firm, economically painful stance despite upcoming U.S. elections. The quote reads, "What other president would be doing this with an upcoming midterm election dictated by politics?" It just perfectly highlights that intense tension between trying to execute a long-term foreign policy strategy and the stark short-term realities of domestic political survival. Which leaves us with the ultimate question as we wrap up this explainer. We've got rapidly escalating kinetic action, totally gridlocked diplomacy, and this high-stakes game of economic chess. So the question is, how close is this deeply entrenched Iranian regime to actually breaking under the pressure? And will the ticking clock of U.S. elections and high gas prices force a premature resolution? It is a deeply tense reality to watch unfold. Thank you so much for exploring this with us today, and we'll see you next time.